a case in which state intervention proved to be very successful. Actually, some people say that the miracle is that the state intervention worked, but it is a good case study to see how different types of government intervention, when well applied, can lead to powerful results in terms of economic development. So just a brief reminder, all of you, I understand that you have taken already Asia-Pacific business, but I think you are all aware of the Asian miracle. So what do you understand about Asian miracle? What is it? Okay, let's go. Easy question. Have you heard of the Asian miracle before? Yes? Okay. Yes? Yes. Yeah. In general terms, the unusual development of Asian countries on the last 25 years, from 1960. So the particular period that is called the miracle is from 1960 to 1990. So after that, there was a change in the nature of Asian economies, and that was more focused on financial services and investment boom, which lasted until 1997. And what happened in 1997? Yes? It was the East Asian crisis, one of the biggest financial crises with global dimension. So, at that time, many people talk about the end of the miracle. But after that, we are now in a stage which somebody called the Phoenix Reborn, and it's a new period of recovery and new growth, and East Asian economies are still the main engines of the world economy at the moment. So, what we are going to study in this lecture is basically this period. So what happened from 1996 to 1990, what makes those Asian economies different? So what are the foundations of the miracle? Because it's important to understand that the causes of the crisis were not related to the factor that created the miracle. They were related to something different, to a change in policy in the 90s. So, also, when we talk about Asian countries, not all Asian countries are considered part of the miracle. So we have a particular focus in East Asian countries. So initially, it was considered a process of economic growth and transformation of 8 high-performing Asian economies. And more specifically, we identified 3 different waves of countries in the Asian miracle. The first wave, somebody called them the high-performing Asian economies, or new industrialized economies, or the 4 tigers, are those 4 countries: South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore. But for South Korea, all small countries, isolated countries. Then there's a second wave, which are generally called Asian 4 in the late 80s. And those are Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and China is also included in this group. And then there is still a third wave, which are called the latecomers. It's in the late 90s, and this is Vietnam, Cambodia, Burma, and Myanmar. So economies that are still developing. So the focus of this lecture is on the first wave and second wave, but for your assignment, you also have to do your own research and compare with the third wave, even when it's not given in the lecture. So, what about Japan? Japan is not part of the miracle. Japan was industrialized far before we start talking about the miracle. Japan industrialized before the Second World War. Although Japan is related to all those economies, it is not considered part of the miracle. So please, in the essays or in the exam, do not include examples from Japan. In the reading, to facilitate comparison, Japan is included. But there is a footnote at the end of the reading explaining that it shouldn't be considered. It is just in order to make clear how some of those countries dictated policies in Japan. Okay. So in general, in that period, 1965 to 1995, there was all the economies in East Asia grew faster than other economies on the world. Not only the countries that we talk about the miracle, but all East and South Asian economies. So that means continued growth in average GDP, continued growth in population welfare and infrastructure. They build more roads, schools, and hospitals. So if we compare, just to have an idea of what the dimension of the miracle, look at this chart. Here we have, in 1960 and in 1992, different groups of countries. North America, Africa, Latin America, and East Asia. Look where South Korea was in 1960. The output per capita was $18.98. So it was 5 times less than Argentina, half than Brazil. It was more or less the same value than Ghana. Okay, they were at the same level, South Korea and Ghana. What happened in 1992? 6,000. 9 times more. Where's Ghana? Now, the level of South Korea was now the level of Mexico, even larger than Mexico, and much more than any other Latin American country. And of course, much more than Ghana, which has barely increased in 30 years. Another example, Hong Kong, 2,000 output per capita. It was already the most developed of the group of economies, but still below, for instance, Mexico. By 1992, it has an output per capita of 16,000. That's the same that Canada. It's actually more than Canada. So it was a huge achievement in comparative terms. So how those countries started at the same level that Africa and moved to the level of the most developed countries in the world. Why could they and Latin American countries couldn't? Look at the annual growth rate per year. In average, more than 6% in all the countries, compared with all the other countries in the world. It's 5 or 6 times more. So, but it is not just about economic growth. They also have a much better educated labor force and more effective systems of public education. And in particular, there was technological development. East Asia developed technologically. That's a key difference with Latin America, where in Mexico, the richest man of Mexico still say that innovation is not necessary. The countries can do well just by copying other countries. So what I mean by technological development, one of the priorities of those countries was closing the technological gap. Look here at patents. Innovation technological innovation is measured with patents.